One of the things that we model around here quite a bit is a cycle of constant evaluation and critique. Now, part of that is because we're an educational institution, and that's part of the training process, is to be continually evaluating, offering suggestions and improvement and instruction. But I think this is a habit that we need to get into that would serve us well when we're serving in a church worship ministry as well, to be in the mindset that we're constantly evaluating, we're constantly analyzing, for the best of intents to improve what we were doing. So we evaluate our worship services on a regular basis because we want to be better at everything. Psalmist 33:3, that's an easy one to remember, isn't it? Sing to him a new song, play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. So sing new songs. If you're going to sing new songs, you got to learn new songs. You have to rehearse. Play skillfully. That takes practice and evaluation from others. So if we're going to continually improve, we have to evaluate. Secondly, we want to evaluate because we want to get perspective from outsiders. By outsiders, I mean people who are not on the worship teams. People who are not perhaps musically inclined. They listen to music, they like music, but they don't know anything about it other than that they enjoy it or not. Listen to them. Listen to what outsiders who are outside the church as well. So those that maybe watch your service online, or just your guests, your visitors who come infrequently. It's a very invaluable input you could get from them. Where can we get data for evaluation? Well, one, we ought to be recording our worship services. So we got a video recording that's used for evaluative purposes. Often it's difficult to get a high quality one, but at least you can get a visual and a general audio recording of what you're doing. You can also get critiques from trusted individuals. I mean, you will get critiques, I'm sure, some unsolicited, but there are certain people that you truly value their judgment. Maybe they are outstanding musicians. Maybe they are veteran worship leaders or pastors or elders, church leaders. Maybe it's your spouse, but someone that you deeply trust, and they're not going to wound you. They're going to speak honestly with you. Those may be the most valuable forms of critique. You're also going to get anecdotal opinions. There are people that are going to tell you after service, oh, that was the best worship service ever. You are just the greatest worship leader since Darlene Check. I don't know. But people are going to build you up, and they're going to say nice things about you, and that's always nice to hear. But understand that these are largely anecdotal. And if you straight up ask someone, hey, how'd you like the service? Most of the time they're going to tell you, yeah, it was great, even when it might not have been, but they want to spare your feelings. So anecdotal is not really worth a whole lot. You're also going to get some unsolicited opinions, and these can be helpful depending on the source. There are people that will, you're not asking for their opinion, but they'll give it to you in some form. And I think in that case, you need to consider the source, because you'll also have some that are just flat up anonymous opinions. And for those, generally, I think it's a good idea just disregard them. Okay, you can be aware. There are people that think that or will say that. But my thought is, if you're not willing to put your name on it, you don't really want anything to change. You just want to complain. So those would be my levels of evaluation where we're getting our data for evaluation. I think there's some general questions that you want to ask after worship service. Overall, what was good? What was bad? What was not so good? Okay, what were the wins? What were the losses? What would you do differently? So hindsight's 20/20, right? So what was missing? What would you add? Or what would you take away? How'd the service flow? Was there disruptions? And this is very obvious often when you see the video of it. And then ask yourself, what caused that? And you might have to back up and go all the way back to the preparation stage. Maybe this was flawed from the very beginning in the design moment of it. Looking back, was anything missing in the preparation? Was there a piece of communication that didn't happen between you and the production crew, between you and the person running lyrics or something? Was it in preparation? And what is the one takeaway? Because you can have a long list of things from an evaluation like this, but when you want to boil it down to what am I going to remember next time from this, and distill it down to that. Now, we have actually a rubric, a form that we use, and I just want to share it with you. This gets pretty detailed, and I don't know that you want to do this every week, although it probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but this is what we do around here when it comes to our chapel services. We want to look at the area of preparation. I've got 5 different areas here that we're going to consider. The first is kind of thinking back to your preparation. Was there good communication? Did everyone know the music well? How about the stage setup? Was that helpful to us? The second area we're going to evaluate is the song selection, because after we sung the songs, then we can say, well, did the song work well? Did the congregation know it? If it was a new song, did they pick up on it quickly? Was it taught effectively? Were the songs overall, rich and doctrinally sound? Were they singable? Was the participation strong? And we want to make notes of that for the future. So if we had a song that just really went well, we want to make note of that and remember that, this one will work with this congregation. Then you might have another one that doesn't go so well, and you realize, that's not going to work. We got to change the key. We got to change the arrangement or something. So take notes of that. A third, you're going to look at your leadership, and that could be you. It could be other vocal leaders who are up front, but look at their confidence level. What about when things didn't go right? Boy, this is a big one. You can learn so much when things don't go right. Most of the things I've learned in my life have been when things don't go right. And you ask yourself, okay, what can I learn from this situation? Think about the words that you say to the congregation, your comments, your verbals, and how could you improve upon those? Number 4 is what I'm calling the presentation. Like, how did it come off? What was it like musically and visually? How about even as practical as the length? Because our services, particularly if we have multiple services, it's critical that we abide by time constraints. So we have to ask that question. Again, flow, not just interruptions to the flow, but just how the music flowed in terms of energy and dynamic and tempo, and that all plays into the emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects of that. How about the worship team? Were they visually engaged? Was Scripture used effectively? And then finally, looking at the production aspects of it. How about the level? What was the volume level like? And again, this is where you want to get trusted input from people in the congregation, because you will get unsolicited comments when it comes to this. You'll get anecdotal comments when it comes to this. What you want is something objective and trusted. The mix, how was the mix? Lyrics, were they readable, correct? Were they advanced correctly? What about the media elements? Announcements, videos, bumper videos, and all of the everything that's on the screen. That's quite a bit there. So as you can see, if you went over these 5 areas point by point by point, you could spend some time doing this. I think it's a very practical thing to do, to have your Monday morning sit down, watch the video, just to improve. This is what football teams do week in and week out. They watch the tape. And we need to have that same kind of mindset, that we have the opportunity now to constantly improve what we're doing. We don't do this so that we can be arrogant and be proud or boastful that we're this awesome worship team. We do this for the sake of the kingdom, because we want to offer God our very best. We want to offer the people that come to worship with us our very best as well. Now, that being said, we are still going to get criticism. As much as we evaluate what we do and we try to do our very best, we are going to be criticized. And between the preaching minister and the worship leader, most of the criticism directed towards leadership in the church is directed to those two individuals. Sometimes the worship leader just feels like they've got a target on their back. We have come through a season in church history that's been called the worship wars, and some churches may still be there as we struggle over various styles and instrumentation and volume, and those issues are all still there. And so as a worship leader, you can't be thin-skinned, you can't be wounded by criticism. Yet it's really difficult, because we're artists, we're musicians, and we are very connected to the music that we make. It's a big part of our identity. Often as artists and musicians, we tend to be sensitive by nature. That's a good thing. We're sensitive to things. We're intuitive. We're emotional by nature. That can be a good thing. It can also hamstring us when it comes to the criticism that we will inevitably receive. You might have a honeymoon for the first 3-6 months, but at some point the honeymoon is over, and you're going to feel the sting of criticism. So how do we deal with that? I heard early on in ministry that there are 2 things that people are going to complain about. One is the temperature of the room, and the other is the volume of the music. And my experience has largely proven that to be true. So when dealing with criticism, these are a couple things that I try to keep in mind as far as principles. Number one, I always assume the best in others until proven otherwise. I really want to listen to people's criticism with an open mind and assume that they have the best intentions possible until they prove otherwise. And I think when that point comes, when you realize, no, this person has other issues. It's not about me. It's not about the music. It's them. There's something about their intentions that's not right. So assume the best. An atmosphere of grace and truth. Listen to the criticism. Be gracious to the source of it. Look for the truth that's in it. I recall a couple of years ago standing out in the lobby of our church, and there was an older couple that had come out because it was just too loud, and they were complaining to me. And I knew them, and I understand the issues, and it's complex. But I just listened, showed grace, and tried to explain, hey, the reason we're doing this is because we love people, we love young people, and they have told us that this is what draws them in. And anyway, I just trying to deal with criticism with that sweet blend of grace and truth is what we want to do. Keep things in perspective. Sometimes the battles, the criticisms that come at us are over such trivial things that they're just not worth it. So keep things in perspective. I recall several years ago, I had someone confront me because one of my worship leaders had taken their shoes off because in their mind, they were thinking I'm on holy ground. And so like Moses took off his shoes, and I didn't see anything wrong with that, but it really offended this person. And we engaged in a conversation about that and actually spent quite a bit of time talking through those issues. And in the big scheme of things, it's a pretty small item. So keep things in perspective. And related to that then is choose your battles carefully. That was the wisdom that was given to me when I went into my first ministry, was there are just some things that just aren't worth fighting over. They're just going to have to accept, hey, that's just the way it is, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth the fight. There are certain things that are worth the fight. So decide that up front. Stick to your guns when you need to. Otherwise, back off and live to fight another day. When dealing with criticism, I think James 1:19 is incredible wisdom. James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to be angry. So it tells us to listen first without becoming defensive. So usually when we're attacked or criticized, our first response is to attack back. We get into a defensive posture and we immediately want to give our side of it and fight back, particularly if we're insecure about something and someone's kind of touched a tender spot with us. We'll want to get defensive. But the challenge is to rein in your tongue and your mind and your heart and just listen. Just listen first. What is the truth that I need to hear in this moment? Secondly, be slow to speak. In other words, be careful with your words. When you do have an opportunity to respond to a criticism, be very careful. If it's via email, read that email. Have someone else read it. Make sure your tone is appropriate. If it's face to face, again, just be very careful with your words. Words have tremendous power to build up or to destroy. And in moments of passion, of anger, of fear, of insecurity, we're in danger of saying things that we're going to regret. So be slow to speak, careful with your words. And finally, be patient with others. James says be slow to anger. So be patient. Treat other people as you would want to be treated. Particularly, sometimes the volume complaints come from older people, and I would just encourage you to, before you respond back in any kind of harsh way, is to empathize, is to listen to them, understand where they are coming from, sit in the pew with them, be their friend, their pastor, be patient, treat them as you would want to be treated. Criticism is always a reality of the Christian minister, but deal with it with grace and truth and with the wisdom of James 1:19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry.